Discover the incredible moment a cowboy caught an Apache arrow, an unexpected love story revealed. Sam squinted against the relentless Arizona sun, its rays harsh and unyielding, just like the drought that had clawed at his family's ranch for 3 long years. The bitter truth gnawed at him. Every inch of fence he mended was just another reminder of the burden of choices not made, dreams unfulfilled. Today, beneath the weight of his father's hat pulled low, he worked on the fence, letting the rhythmic clang of hammer against wood drown out the anxious thoughts swirling in his mind. Generations of hopes and sweat pooled inside him, a mixture of pride and despair rushing through his veins. With each swing, he felt the tightness in his chest grow. His hands trembled, scraping against something lodged in the rough bark of an old mesquite tree. Heart quickening, he reached down, brushing away dirt and grime to uncover an ancient Apache arrow. Its sharp tip glimmered, a flash of promise or perhaps a curse, lighting a fire in his heart. But hope felt foreign in a life where despair ruled, where each day dripped monotony and vulnerability. "What does it even mean?" he muttered, wrestling with the familiar thread of fear and doubt that wove through his thoughts. Did this arrow signify salvation? Or was it yet another taunt from fate, reminding him of a legacy he felt ill-equipped to uphold? As the day wore on, whispers began to circulate in town about the arrow's significance, heralding tales of Kaya, the Apache woman who had long since faded into the dust of history. The echoes of her name tapped against Sam's mind like an old broken drum. What prospect lay buried in rocks and memories? As the sun lowered in the sky, with the ghost of Kaya cloaked in legends and cultural divides, Sam found himself trapped between the stories told and the life he lived. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then she appeared, Eleanor, a whirlwind of determination and passion. Her curls bounced as she half ran into the local diner, eager to connect with her roots. The moment Sam's gaze crossed hers, an electrifying understanding crackled in the air. The weight of his family's history collided in an intensity that could ignite fires or extinguish dreams. Yet as they spoke, words stumbled over each other, culturally spoken divides left them fumbling in misunderstandings. Inside him raged a tempest of emotions, pride battled with an emerging sense of vulnerability. "Here she comes, the outsider," a voice from the past whispered, dredging up the town's whispers of divisions long held. Sam clenched his jaw, wrestling to bridge the chasm that mocked him daily. So much seemed out of reach, and yet he was pulled toward her, even as fear coiled around his insides. What if he lost everything? And when that hidden diary surfaced, the last testament of Kaya's life fell into Elena's hands. Sam's breath hitched. The pages contained secrets that could unearth their own legacies, threatening to consume his fragile peace. With every word she spoke, buried histories trembled in the wind, and uncertainty hung heavily in the air. Would he sacrifice his inheritance for a future he couldn't quite comprehend? Looming questions scratched at his resolve, night encircling the day with no signs of relief. The arrow, the diary, Eleanor, everything felt precariously positioned, balanced on the edge of a knife. Just then, the world around him fell quiet, anticipation crackling like kindling. Would he dare to leap into the unknown, or would fear keep him shackled to the past? The stakes felt fierce, and with the heavens darkening, Sam stood at the precipice of his fate, breath heavy with the weight of choices yet to come. The following morning dawned with a heaviness in his chest as Sam stared at the dusty horizon. The arrow had been a spark, but now it felt like a weight attached to him, dragging him deeper into uncertainty. Questions spiraled in his mind. What if he revealed the truth behind the arrow? What if deep secrets buried over centuries ushered in chaos instead of clarity? He turned toward the ranch, its contours barely visible under the shimmer of a relentless sun. Here he could no longer afford to linger in the shadows. Determined, Sam made his way to the diner where Eleanor had become a fixture of hope and confusion. The bustling chatter, tinged with laughter and the aroma of coffee, juxtaposed with the unease he felt. It was a sanctuary for many, but for him, it was the moment he had to confront what lay within. "Sam!" Elena's bright voice rang above the noise, pulling his focus away from the clamor. She stood at the booth, scribbling in her notepad, her whole demeanor radiating an energy that was both magnetic and terrifying. He joined her, heart racing. "Can we talk about Kaya?" Elena's expression flickered, curiosity mingling with caution. "You mean from the diary? You've been thinking about it?" "More than thinking," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with the weight of unvoiced anxieties. I wonder what she would think of what we're doing, what it means to dig into our past." Her expression softened as if she could see the struggle within him. "She fought for her people's stories to be heard, Sam. We shouldn't shy away from it." Did she realize how dangerously close they danced to the edge of history, reality, and the consequences of unveiling secrets? She had a fire in her, one he was drawn to but feared would consume them both. Elena leaned closer, her eyes earnest. "You can't let fear dictate your choices. There's power in confronting what we don't understand." Yet Sam felt an invisible hand tightening around his throat. They were standing at a crossroads of identity and legacy, where truth could either unite them or rip apart old wounds. He hesitated, torn between the comfort of ignorance and the yearning to embrace a future rooted in honesty. Later that day, as the sun slipped towards the horizon, Sam returned to the ranch's old barn. He needed to confront the echoes of his family's past, the dusty remnants of their history laid bare before him. He rifled through forgotten mementos, pulling out items laden with nostalgia, old photographs, a faded saddle. Each told a story rich with pride and turmoil. The stark reality that accompanied each piece began to inspire resolve. With newfound determination, Sam fell to the dusty floor, diving deeper into a box wedged in a corner. He clawed at layers of fabric and papers, his heart racing with each passing moment. What if he could uncover something that would amplify their connection, turn the arrow from a relic of fear into a symbol of resilience? Uncertainty enveloped him like a heavy shroud as he pulled out a bundle, recognizing it as an old journal belonging to his father. As he flipped the pages, he stumbled upon entries revealing not just his father's struggles, but also handwritten stories about Kaya, echoing the very tales Elena had drawn from her findings. Memories of a battle fought, one of preservation against erasure. Suddenly, he felt empowered by the revelation, a rush of ideas breaking through the fog of doubt. This was not just about the past. It was an awakening of his own spirit, a battle to reconnect with a fragmented identity. Standing up, he clenched the journal against his chest, flooded with new possibilities. They could weave their stories together, confronting their lineage head-on. Yet beneath the excitement lingered that nagging fear, a whisper that warned him, people may not be ready for the truth they're about to dig up. As twilight embraced the sky, Sam's thoughts sharpened, revealing a path forward that was both thrilling and terrifying. Would he have the courage to stand beside Elena as they unearth each layer together, or would the shadows of the past pull them apart? The horizon now glinted with the promise of discovery, but just how deep would he need to go, and what would he uncover about himself in the process? He knew one thing for certain, the past wouldn't stay buried much longer. Sam awoke the next morning to the sound of wind rustling through the trees surrounding the ranch. The whispered promise of the day beckoned him, yet uncertainty clung to him like morning mist. He had spent restless hours thinking about the journal and Kaya's stories, about what they might mean for his own future. The arrow, the catalyst of all this, now felt more like a calling than a curse. He reached for the journal, allowing its weight to settle in his hands. The fragile pages seemed to pulse with life, inviting him to dissect not just the legacy of his father, but also the tangled threads of his own identity. What did he truly want? The weight of family expectations pressed down on him, but this weight was nothing compared to the empowerment of knowledge. With a sense of urgency, Sam grabbed a notebook and a pen, settling into a sun-warmed spot outside the barn. Intention flowed from his fingertips as he wrote down key discoveries he had gleaned from his father's journal. The struggles, the victories, and above all, the profound connection Kaya had to everything that happened in their lineage danced in his mind like echoes at a distant place he was eager to explore. Who was he beneath the weight of tradition? It was a question he wrestled with, and the answer seemed out of reach. Yet as he crafted a narrative around the lives of his ancestors, something shifted within him. Each word seemed to peel away layers of his doubt, revealing vulnerabilities he had long ignored. Here, he was not just Sam middle ground between past and future. He was Sam, a storyteller crafting his own destiny. It tugged at him, the desire to share what he had learned. He envisioned a dynamic partnership with Elena. There's a collaboration intertwined with history, hope, and perhaps even a little chaos. The thought ignited a spark in him, a flicker of bravery that coursed through his veins. Before he could second-guess himself, he picked up his phone and sent her a quick invitation. "Meet me at the barn. There's something important I need to share." The message was abrupt, but his heart raced with electrifying hope. Would they be able to explore these discoveries together? Would she feel the same urgency that now surged within him? While he waited, the shadows of the barn enveloped him, echoing memories of childhood days spent here. This sense of refuge mixed with a rising tide of realization. He was there to reclaim more than just artifacts. He was reclaiming a part of himself that had been dormant for far too long. Elena arrived faster than he expected, her presence radiating an infectious enthusiasm. "I got your message. What's up?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. As he took a deep breath, he contemplated the crucial moment laid before him. "I found something. It's my father's journal, and it has stories about Kaya, her fight, her legacy." The words hung in the air, both heavy and liberating. He felt a profound vulnerability in revealing the extent of his awakening. "I want to dig deeper into this, to confront what it all means for us, our future." Elena's eyes widened, reflecting understanding and shared awe. "This could change everything, Sam. Are we ready for it?" The question loomed large, weighing against everything he had come to know. Was he prepared for the fallout, not just for him, but for her as well? Would they tread carefully across the precipice of history, or would they plunge headfirst into the depths of their shared uncertainty? At that moment, Sam realized the gravity of his decision. This leap into unveiling their intertwined legacies would not just illuminate truths, but also challenge the very core of who he thought he was. The sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting long shadows and lending a sense of urgency to their quiet resolve. They were at the brink of something profound, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone in this journey. As they shared tentative smiles, a rustling outside the barn made their hearts race. The past had a way of whispering through the branches, and the stories woven into that arrow lingered beyond the surface. What truths were waiting just beyond the barn's door? Sam steeled himself. The moment had arrived to confront the unknown together, but first, he sensed a shadow flickering in the darkness outside, beckoning for them to pursue the deeper secrets hidden beneath the surface. Sam's heart quickened as the rustling outside intensified, a sharp contrast to the intimate atmosphere enveloping them. A flurry of questions stormed through his mind. What awaited them outside? What bones of the past would be unearthed in the gathering dusk? With a deep breath, he exchanged a determined glance with Elena, their resolve settling like a heavy fog around them. Stepping outside, the cool breeze brushed against his skin, bringing with it a fresh wave of apprehension. The shadows stretched and danced along the barn walls, mocking his uncertainty. Every step felt like treading on fragile ground, but for the first time, he craved confrontation. What had once felt suffocating now beckoned him like a siren's call. Elena's footfalls echoed behind him, steady and unyielding. "Are we really doing this?" she murmured, a hint of both fear and excitement lacing her voice. "Definitely," Sam replied, pulling his shoulders back as he turned fully to face the expanse of the ranch. The land stretched out before him, vast and familiar, yet inexplicably foreign. "This is the moment to break free from the shadows of our pasts." As they ventured further, the night wrapped around them, cradling potential but also danger. He felt the weight of his father's legacy pressing against him. It was a burden he'd carried for so long. Sauntering over to a familiar sycamore tree, he gripped its rough bark with one hand, drawing strength from the solidness beneath his fingers. Here, his father had introduced him to resilience, to hope. So why did it now seem to pull him in two different directions? We need to dig deeper, not just into Kaya's story, but into our own fears about it, Sam said, turning to Elena. Her gaze bore intensity, the spark of shared ambition igniting between them. Are you scared? She asked, her voice soft yet probing. Terrified, he admitted, a thread of honesty woven into his words. But I can't ignore this calling. I can't allow fear to define me anymore. He felt the surge of determination rise in him, cascades of self-doubt receding like the tide. The moon cast an ethereal glow over the landscape, illuminating patches of grass and hidden paths leading into uncharted territory. There was something magical about this moment, the underlying promise of discovery, almost palpable in the air. But beneath the thrill lay an urgent question. What if the truths they encountered shattered more than they built? Just as those thoughts wove darker threads into his resolve, Elena turned sharply, pointing toward a thicket of bushes nearby. Look! In a heartbeat, the tension shifted to something visceral, something uncomfortable yet exciting. Emerging from behind the bushes, silhouetted against the moonlight, was a figure. Sam's heart raced as he squinted, trying to discern whether this presence was friend or foe. The figure stepped forward, and recognition jolted through him. A distant relative rumored to have left town long ago, rumored to hold the last key to connecting their family histories. Elena's eyes widened. Do you think they know about Kaya? Do they know what we're searching for? Before Sam could respond, the figure approached. It felt like fate thrumming through every fiber of his being. This encounter held the potential to shatter their fears, yet it could equally unravel the delicate strands of understanding they'd begun to weave together. Would this unexpected encounter illuminate the darkness of the past, or would it plunge them deeper into uncertainty? As their paths converged under the watchful moon, Sam couldn't help but think that his true journey was just beginning. The figure paused before him, eyes scanning Sam's face. I've been waiting for you two, they said, a knowing smile cresting their lips. Each word hung in the air, laden with implications that sent a thrill down Sam's spine. What burden were they about to lift, and what truths did they hold about the intertwined legacies of their families? The night was far from over, and the answers awaited them as they stepped further into the unknown. As the figure stepped into moonlight, Sam squinted, a mix of confusion and anticipation rushing through him. This was no mere family gathering. This felt like a chapter of his life he hadn't opened yet, a piece of the puzzle that had eluded him for too long. Who are you? He asked, striving to keep his voice steady, betraying no hint of the storm swirling within. I'm Rachel, the figure replied with an easy confidence. You're Sam, right? I've heard about you and your search for Kaya. Behind him, Elena was silent, scanning Rachel with wary curiosity. Sam felt the space between them contract, pressing against his chest. What could Rachel possibly know? Is it true then? He pressed, his heart thundering in his ears. Do you know what happened? Rachel hesitated, her smile fading momentarily. It's complicated, she said, but I've spent years piecing together our history. There are secrets buried in this land, and some of them are tied directly to your family. The moonlight caught Rachel's features, illuminating the lines of determination etched into her face. Sam's instinct told him she possessed knowledge that could, but might not, lead them into the light. A rush of anxiety propelled him forward. Then tell us, we can't keep wandering through the dark. Rachel nodded, clearly weighing her words carefully. Okay, but first, you need to understand that the truths I hold might change everything you thought you knew about your father, your mother, and maybe even Kaya. A heavy silence hung in the air. Sam could feel the walls around him begin to shift as his perception of his past teetered on the edge of unraveling. If it changes everything, then bring it on, he said, combativeness creeping into his tone. I'm not afraid of the truth. Are you certain? Rachel countered, tilting her head. The truth is often messier than the stories we tell ourselves. It doesn't just illuminate, it can also devastate. The edge of fear gnawed at him, confronting the growing resolve within. Sam had spent years caging his emotions, allowing the numbness of his father's expectations to dictate his reality. If he was to embrace any part of what had been lost, he needed to confront not only his lineage but the latent feelings about who he was expected to be. With a steady breath he nodded, determination crystallizing in his gut. I won't turn away anymore, Rachel. Whatever it is, I can handle it. Elena's hand slipped into his, squeezing tightly. Sam sought her eyes, searching for a shared bravery. It was time for both of them to redefine what they sought and discover how deep this rabbit hole of legacy went. Together they would unearth the past, whatever shadows lingered there. Rachel glanced between them, seeming to weigh their resolve, then stepped closer. All right, the first piece lies with the sycamore you're leaning against. Your father planted it the day you were born, believing he was burying part of a long-dormant conflict. As their surroundings faded into the backdrop of their conversation, Sam's heart raced. What confrontation would this bring? He felt the pulsing drive to unearth things long hidden in the earth beneath him, even as a cold dread gnawed at the corners of his mind. Tell us everything, Sam urged, his voice steady yet quivering with the weight of expectation. As Rachel began to speak, the winds of the night swirled around them, foreshadowing revelations that lay ahead. Each word felt like a creaking door opening, an invitation into the unknown, where secrets lay, aching to be revealed. Would Sam and Elena emerge from their revelations unscathed? Or would the truths they unearthed redefine not just their family history, but their futures as well? The air thickened with possibility, and Sam realized there was no going back now. It was time for his journey to truly begin. Sam felt his pulse quicken as Rachel's gaze shifted toward the ancient sycamore tree. Its gnarled branches curled overhead like twisted fingers, holding years of unspoken stories within its bark. The weight of the past pressed down on him like a shroud, yet beneath it lay an ember of curiosity that had ignited long ago. "What do you mean by conflict?" Sam asked, his voice steady but edged with urgency. He needed to know where this was leading. Rachel took a deep breath, eyes narrowing as if trying to focus on a distant truth. "Your family has been entrenched in a struggle that spans generations, one that involves not just your parents, but also your ancestors. This tree isn't just a marker of your birth, it's a symbol of a promise made long ago." As she spoke, Rachel laid her hand against the bark, her touch both reverent and firm. Sam's heart weighed heavily in his chest. The promise felt distant and abstract. Yet, in this moment, it anchored him, offering him both purpose and a sense of belonging he had long been searching for. "Do you know where it started?" Elena interjected, her voice a mix of disbelief and yearning. "What kind of promise?" Rachel turned her stern gaze back to them. "It's about loyalty and betrayal, and how easily those concepts can shift." A tangle of emotions crashed through Sam. He thought of his father, the fortitude masked beneath layers of stoicism. So often, he'd yearned for his approval, for the kind of straightforward love that remained elusive. Did betrayal run through their blood, threading its way into every family interaction? Would finding out the truth simply exacerbate the rifts he sought to mend? "Is any of this about Kaya?" Sam pressed, a surge of desperation coloring his query. Rachel hesitated, her expression softening as she regarded him. "Yes, but you need to brace yourself. The connection runs deeper than you realize. It involves choices made by your parents that influence the paths of everyone around you, including Kaya's." Sam could feel the ground shift beneath his feet. It wasn't just about uncovering family secrets anymore. This was about understanding the choices that had been made for him and how they had shaped the person he had become. It was a sobering realization, one that forced him to confront his own decisions, his own aspirations. He could no longer avoid the truth of who he was or who he could be. "Tell us how it connects," he demanded, determination flooding back into his voice. "If it has anything to do with Kaya, I have to know." As Rachel began weaving the narrative of his family's past, Sam felt a shift within him. The uncertainty that had clouded his life now felt vulnerable under the light of impending revelations. He was no longer just a passive seeker, he was stepping into the role of a participant in his own story. With each word, Sam felt pieces of himself begin to reconnect, the ideals he'd buried under expectation, the authenticity he realized he had been denying. If Rachel spoke truthfully, then the legacies of loyalty and betrayal could be rewritten, not only for his family but also for himself. But as Rachel elaborated on the connections between his family, the sycamore tree, and the mistakes of the past, a deep foreboding settled in. What if the truths unveiled led to the destruction of everything he had wanted? The narrative continued to evolve, painting a picture of familial struggles that pushed Sam towards an uncomfortable realization. Sometimes, confronting the past meant risking everything he thought he was building for himself. "Are you ready for what's next?" Rachel asked, bringing the weight of his choices back to the forefront, just as the wind howled through the branches above them. Sam nodded slowly, despite the storm of doubt within him. He understood intuitively that answers could come with profound complications. The truth awaited him like a new path leading deeper into the wilderness of his identity, a journey that promised both lost fragments and generated questions he had never considered. What if embracing the entire story changed the course of his life forever? As Rachel prepared to reveal the details of the conflict, Sam was left wondering if everything lay before him, or if he was simply taking the first step into a darkness he couldn't comprehend. This was the moment everything began to shift, and Sam's heart raced, ready or not. Each crease in the bark seemed to echo whispers of betrayal and loyalty, amplifying the tension in Sam's chest. The promise Rachel spoke of shifted from abstract to tangible, demanding examination. He could feel the stakes rising, as truth and choice stood poised to clash in the ring of his father's legacy. "What if the promise turns out to be a curse?" Sam said, his thoughts racing ahead of him. "What if it shatters everything?" "Then you must decide what to do with it," Rachel replied, her voice low yet steady. "Understanding is the first step toward reclaiming your story." Reclaiming. The word ignited a spark of resolve in Sam that he had scarcely acknowledged. He thought of Kaya, the look in her eyes when she had felt betrayed by his indecision. Had his hesitations also been rooted in loyalty to a family with a fractured past? Undertones of loyalty, betrayal, and choices swirled through his mind like a storm as he visualized the consequences of inaction. "I always thought I understood my family, but maybe I only knew what they wanted me to know," he admitted, his voice faltering. "My choices have always been guided by their expectations." Then suddenly a recognition struck him. Through his acceptance of expectations, he had surrendered his agency. The very threads binding him to the family legacy were the same ropes binding his feet to a path that felt increasingly heavy. "Have you ever thought that you could rewrite that legacy?" Rachel leaned closer, her eyes piercing through the fabric of his doubts. "Your history doesn't have to dictate your future. You have the power to make choices differently." Was it true? The fear of losing everything made Sam recoil, yet beneath that fear lay a burgeoning yearning for freedom, the ideal of crafting his own path. Suddenly, memories of his childhood, living under the shadow of parental expectations, flooded him like an overture to a new life. He recalled the moment he'd first picked up a paintbrush, how every stroke allowed him to express feelings unsaid. Art had been his moment of rebellion, the first inkling of defiance against a rigid script he felt forced to follow. Yet as quickly as the clarity arrived, it slipped through his fingers like sand. He imagined the disappointment he might cause within his family by breaking the unspoken rules, and a wave of anxiety washed over him. "What if I don't want what they wanted for me?" Sam questioned, his voice trembling under the weight of realizations that pressed against his chest like a heavy stone. "Then define your own want," Rachel urged, her hand steady against his shoulder, firm yet comforting. "Dig deeper. Find out what makes you who you are, rather than who you were told to be." Sam's heart surged with agitation and possibility. He pulled back for a moment to collect himself, sensing an unfamiliar resoluteness taking root. The thought echoed in his mind. Who had he been without the constraints? "Tell me about the choices," he said, the fire of determination igniting his words. "What choices did my parents make that led us here?" "Choices rooted in fear," Rachel explained, her voice low with intensity. "Fear of losing everything, because loss was the family's shared past. It shapes their decisions, and by extension yours. But you must cut through that fear to see clearly. Will you risk everything to forge a new path, or will you linger in the shadows of expectations?" Sam felt the weight of her words wash over him, battering against the doubts and fears he had harbored. He envisioned taking the leap into the unknown, the risk of failure tinged with an exhilarating sense of agency he had never felt before. "Maybe exploring my family's past is the key to understanding what's at stake," he whispered, his voice trembling with an anticipatory edge. "But what if I discover things I can't unsee?" Rachel nodded, her expression resolute. then you face those truths head on. The real danger lies in avoiding the journey altogether. His heart raced, caught between the precipice of fear and the lure of freedom. The tree loomed behind them, its twisted branches like sentinels, silently beckoning him to consider the possibilities. Would he dare to uproot himself, to rewrite a legacy that no longer served him? In that moment, Sam realized he stood at a crossroads that demanded engagement, reflection, and growth. The urgency of unfolding events pressed against him, just as a low rumble of thunder echoed through the sky. The skies mirrored his inner turmoil, as if nature itself recognized the tempest brewing within him. "What happens next?" he asked, a shaky exhilaration lifting his voice. "What do I do once I know the truth?" Rachel simply smiled, the shadow of mystery hanging on her lips. "You take the first step." As anticipation swelled like a storm about to break, Sam sensed an urgent call to trust himself. With an unfamiliar daring fleshing out his intent, he understood he had to make a choice. The past might hold answers, but only his actions could carve out the future. He wasn't prepared for what was to come, yet every nerve in his body hummed with the promise of discovery. What awaited him on this new path? Would it lead to enlightenment or devastation? Sam was about to find out, and with every breath, he welcomed the uncertainty ahead. The piercing silence that followed Rachel's words felt alive, a tangible force thrumming in the air between them. Sam stood, the very ground beneath his feet teetering on the edge of a precipice. What did it mean to take the first step? In the unflinching gaze of the tree, a part of him craved clarity, while another quaked with unease. As he turned away from the twisted silhouette of the ancient oak, a visceral instinct urged him to move. He stepped back onto the path leading to his childhood home, mindful of every footfall. His aim had never felt clearer. Face the truth buried within his family's history. Time to confront not just the promises made, but the silence that clung to them like damp air around a storm. Inside, the familiar creaks of the old wooden floor met him like lost companions, each creak a memory, a fragment of a story unwritten. The scent of aged wood and lingering coffee whispered of family gatherings, laughter entwined with unspoken disappointment. He combed through the layers of things scattered about the living room, searching for the remnants of his past. Staring at the clutter, Sam felt a lateral surge of ambition clashing against his fear. It was here, in this very chaos, that choices had been made, that paths had irrevocably diverged. He stumbled upon an old box labeled Memories hidden beneath the couch. The word clung to the box like half-forgotten aspirations. Angling it out from its dark recess, he ran a finger across the top, a sense of resolve igniting within him. Plucking open the lid, he was met with a trove of forgotten relics, photographs of a younger version of his parents, smiling with promises for the future, letters laden with secrets that trembled at the edges of paper, and at the bottom, an old paintbrush, its bristles frayed and worn but heavy with memories of creation and rebellion. How had he left it behind? Was it an artifact or a weapon? He could almost hear Rachel's voice filtering through the static of his thoughts, urging him to redefine what belonging meant in the context of self. In an impulsive bid for exploration, he began to sift through the letters, each one a moth-eaten garment revealing the threads of unfulfilled hopes, each inked line pulsing with the echoes of disappointment and fear. The first letter gripped his focus. It detailed his father's struggles with expectations, a pressure to uphold an image of strength, culminating in choices that resounded with disappointment. Sam's breath caught, the realization thrumming through him, the missteps of generations, shackles that had bound them to a predefined destiny. As he absorbed the words, a tempest of empathy and anger roiled within him. His father had fought, yet in that fight lay the seeds of the very frustration that had shaped Sam's life. This was truth, raw and uncompromising, a truth that unearthed the dark underbelly of their family legacy. "Am I destined to repeat this cycle?" he muttered, the question an invocation, a challenge hung in the air. The memory of Rachel's command surged forward, dig deeper, forge ahead. What if the brush he gripped so tightly could help him create something new? With newfound clarity, he recognized this was more than uncovering family history. It was a purging cycle, a chance to paint over the canvas that had been laid before him, strokes of vibrant choice infusing color into shades of regret. The weight of legacy felt lighter, as the pressure of expectations steadily began to unearth more than just disappointment. Pain and potential swirled like colors in a palette. He placed the letters aside and focused on the paintbrush in his hand. What if he dared to create once more? The canvas of his life lay before him, blank and waiting. The impulse to reclaim his passion ignited a fire in his belly that felt thrillingly terrifying, but he couldn't yet see how far this journey would take him. As dusk settled outside, the last slivers of light seeped through the window, casting long shadows around the room. In that dim illumination, Sam contemplated the path leading away from the legacy he had inherited. Where did the brush belong? Under the weight of expectation, or would it find purpose in the hands of its creator? He remembered Rachel's challenge. The real danger lay in avoidance. He was reaching for more than just understanding. It was his moment to confront not only his past, but also the choice to embrace his true self, to honor the creative spirit that inherently connected him to the freedom he longed to seize. But what awaited him as he stood on this threshold of self-definition? Would the exploration of his family's truths lead him to liberation or destruction? As darkness enveloped the home, Sam gripped the paintbrush tighter, its texture grounding him in this defining moment. Here, in the belly of his legacy, he was prepared to unearth answers that might break him, or perhaps, finally set him free. And as he poised the brush against a blank surface waiting for the first stroke, a powerful voice from his memory haunted him. What if recreating his story unleashed an unexpected force unwilling to let him write it? Fingers trembling, Sam hovered the brush above the canvas, an arm's length away from an interpretation of possibility he had yet to conceive. Heart pounding, he could almost hear the unsteady cadence of his own breath as doubt clamped around him like a vice. What if each stroke held the power not only to rewrite his narrative, but to shatter the existential prison he had built around himself? He hesitated, recalling the letters he had discarded to the side. Those voices, remnants of his ancestors' whispered ties to expectation, pressed against his psyche. They urged him to conform, to honor a legacy wealthier in burden than applause. Yet the frayed brush between his fingertips, a relic of unformed aspirations, tensed with potential. Closing his eyes, he shut out the oppressive weight of his family's history. He imagined the life he craved, vivid and alive, a canvas painted with vibrant strokes of authenticity. His mind blossomed with images, the vivid joy of creation igniting an ember of courage within him. No more shadow puppet to his father or his mother's dreams. With a swift breath, he thrust the paintbrush onto the blank surface and the color splashed, the first stroke transforming hesitation into expression. Where there had once been fear, now lay an expansive field of creativity. Each flick of the brush liberated a piece of himself, an outcry against the restraints he had long accepted. He hadn't realized how ingrained the silence had been, silence as an act of survival, a survival that relied on conformity to family expectations. The colors bled into one another, reflections of passion and rebellion intertwining on the canvas. Sam found himself moving freely, fists unclenching around long-held resentments. With each layer of color, he confronted suppressed grief over choices made by those before him, powerful ghosts he had long feared would consume him. But even as the paint mingled, another fear began to stir. Distant echoes of Rachel's question flickered through his mind. Could he truly forge his identity amid this chaotic beauty? Was he destined to shake off the shackles of expectation, only to stumble into yet another pitfall of his own making? The prospect of failure loomed ominously, like dark clouds threatening to overshadow the brilliance he was uncovering. In his moment of doubt, Sam reached for another letter, feeling the crisp edges against his palms, unraveling it instinctively. The words drew him back in, unlocking his resolve, his father's uncertainties, every curl of ink tracing a mythology of fear and ambition laid bare across the pages, suddenly crystallized into a collective understanding, a harmony forged through generational fragility. He began to understand the intricate tapestry woven into their lives, the emotion that pulsated beneath their decisions. They had all stood, unknowingly, on the precipice he was now navigating. His breath deepened as he let the revelation settle within him. He felt for the first time the weight of this lineage transform into a bridge rather than a barrier. With renewed clarity, he returned to the canvas, now alive with color. His brush moved fluidly, inspired by a mixture of pain and hope, digging deeper into his heart. With each stroke, he was crafting his own stroke of destiny. But the curtain of night was thickening outside, shadows creeping into corners, threatening to swallow the bright world he was sketching. All it would take was a single moment of second-guessing for the light to flicker out once more, and Sam could feel that familiar chill of doubt creeping back. Could he truly embrace the tempest brewing within him? Would the transformative energy of expression ignite a new definition of legacy? As spectral images danced before his eyes, memories shaking loose yet unfurling a new understanding, he reached for a darker hue, preparing to capture the rawest essence of struggle, the brush poised on the edge of that sultry dark. Leaning into it, he understood the impending plunge into the unknown was the very core of his newfound resolve. But just as he was about to unleash this deeper layer of emotion, the door creaked open, shattering the silence that enveloped him. A flash of movement startled him, pulling him back from the brink of his passionate creation. "Sam?" The voice echoed through the now still air. "Rachel." Where she stood, he drew a breath. This moment felt both a long-awaited relief and a looming challenge. What truths could she reveal? He was poised at a crossroads, a canvas of his life at stake. Would he welcome her interruption as an ally, or view it as a threat to his burgeoning identity? With renewed urgency coursing through him, Sam realized he was about to confront not just his past, but the possibility of forging a future, the outcome tethered precariously to this moment of connection. How would this brush with Rachel alter the trajectory of his story? As their eyes met, he understood that this encounter could very well determine the vibrancy of the canvas ahead. As Rachel stepped into the dim light of the room, her presence felt like a jolt of electricity. Sam's heart raced, caught between surprise and the weight of emotion tied to his creative endeavor. Every color on his canvas screamed for attention, but her entrance reminded him of the complexities that lay beyond the painted surface. "Sam, I feel like I've stumbled in on something important," Rachel said, her eyes scanning the vast array of color before settling on the letters strewn across the floor, remnants of paths he had just begun to explore. "You look like you're in the midst of a revelation." "I am," he admitted, his voice steady, yet tinged with uncertainty. "What have you come to tell me?" That question hung in the air like the stillness before a storm. He was prepared to unlock the doors he had pushed against for so long, but he wasn't sure how her revelations would tie into his journey of self-discovery. Rachel stepped closer, her gaze probing his. "I just spoke with Elena. She's worried about you, Sam, about how fast you're moving and how deeply you're diving into the past. She thinks you might be running away from something instead of confronting it." Her words cut through him with unexpected intensity, a piercing truth that felt like a mirror reflecting back his own demons. There it was, the familiar grip of doubt and confusion swirling like a tempest as the shadows loomed larger. "But it doesn't have to be a retreat," he countered, shaking his head. "I'm confronting my father's legacy. I'm creating my own." "But at what cost?" Rachel asked, crossing her arms as if challenging him to consider the ramifications of his choices. "Unveiling the past is important, but you're standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Are you prepared for that?" For a fleeting moment, Sam felt his resolve waver under her scrutiny. What if she was right? What if his rebellious brushstrokes were simply a desperate attempt to escape the shadows and losses that had always chased him? He had forged his ambitions in the fires of his family struggles, yet the fear of repeating those mistakes loomed large. As if sensing his internal conflict, Rachel stepped closer, softening her voice. "You don't have to do it alone. You have people who care about you. Embrace their support. Acknowledge your history without letting it dictate your future." The words resonated deeply within him, a flicker of realization igniting. He looked past the swirling colors on the canvas, connecting with the essence of his father, the unattainable expectations set upon him, but ultimately his desire for connection remained within reach. In that moment, Sam understood the complexity of legacy. It was not merely about rejection or adherence, it was about integration, crafting a narrative that would allow him to exist in harmony with past truths while forging his unique path. "Maybe you're right," he replied, his voice steadier now. I've been so focused on the past, I never thought about how connecting with those who care could play a significant role in my future. I don't want to repeat their mistakes. Gian. With a slight, encouraging smile, Rachel gestured to the canvas. The truths you uncover will be an extension of you, and when you blend those colors, your past, relationships, emotions, you create something entirely new. Instead of casting out the past, transform it into a foundation. Sam felt tears prick at the edges of his resolve as he finally understood. He could paint not only his identity, but also the connections, the moments of vulnerability that colored his existence. It wasn't just about the legacy he inherited, it was about the future he was now willing to cultivate with the support of those around him. "I'm ready," he stated with newfound confidence, clutching the brush that had felt both liberating and daunting. Ready to rise anew, but also to embrace the past and everyone connected to it. Starting today, I'll honor Kaya's legacy in my own voice, but not alone. Rachel's encouragement was palpable. She nodded, creating space as his energy shifted from fear to empowerment. Each stroke from this point forward would resonate with the familial echoes, but also carve out his narrative, a blend of colors, stories, faith, and the pressing joy that came with confronting vulnerability. As uncertainty painted a landscape before him, he gripped the brush and pressed forward, ready to compose the next chapter. The canvas unfurled into something vibrant and beautiful, a testament to the journey of self-discovery. Through each brushstroke, he not only reclaimed his own identity, but also the interconnectedness that tethered him to family and history. It was a declaration of becoming. Together, they would explore the unveiled memories, threading their legacies into a shared tapestry of truth and joy, not burdened by fear, but illuminated by hope. As he stepped back from the canvas, feeling a surge of accomplishment wash over him, Sam knew he wouldn't retreat into silence or complacency anymore. He was at the forefront of forging a new legacy, one that celebrated past struggles while welcoming vibrant shades of a future teeming with connection and possibility. Now was the moment to step into the light, the dawning realization of growth at the intersection of authenticity and acceptance. Sam was no longer just a product of his heritage. He was the artist, ready to create a masterpiece of his own making. Embracing the collaborative spirit with Rachel and Elena, he welcomed the journey ahead, knowing that past legacies fashioned from loyalty and betrayal could transform into an innovative future colored by compassion and self-acceptance. The night deepened, but as Sam continued to paint the unfolding story of his life, it was clear his journey had only just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of backing the channel through these actions.